Hey guys. All right, today we're going to find slope, but they're only going to give us 2 points, not a graph like we had yesterday. So I want to start with a graph, what you already know, and then I'm going to move to the points. Then I'm going to give you a formula that you can use that you're going to use for the next 3 years when you do this, and you're going to do this quite a bit. Remember slope? Slope actually has a variable called m. That's what Like we got x's and y's. When you see a variable m, that usually represents slope. And slope is the rise over the run. So if I have an intersection here and an intersection here, I'll flip my color here. If I have an intersection there and an intersection, well, that doesn't help because it's black and black. But my rise is, I'm going to have a rise of 2 to go from this dot to this dot. I'm going to rise 2 and run 1. So if I was doing the rise like you did yesterday, I'm going to have a rise of 2 and I'm going to have a run of 1. Well, 2 over 1 is the same as a slope of 2. So I got to get an answer at 2, but they're not going to give you a graph here today. They're going to give you 2 points. All right. So I graphed out this point. This point is over 6, up 6. 6, 6 is my first point. My second point, right up here, is over 7, up 8. So you got to understand that these are my x values because it moves me over on my x. Up is my y values, and these are your y values because we're going to use those x's and y's in your formula. So where does this 2 come from? Well, it's your rise. Well, what do you mean it's my rise? How did I get my rise? Well, you went from 6 up to 8. Well, 6 to 8 is a rise of 2, a change of 2. That's a big word, change. So I had a change of 2 moving from 6 to 8, and that's my rise. Well, where did the 1 come from? Well, I changed from 6 to 7, and that's a change of 1. So I had a change of 2 over a change of 1. And that's what slope is. It's all about changing. How much did it change? So if you look right here, I wrote out, where does the 2 come from? Well, if I look at my y's here, my rise, my pink, is my y values. So this pink is going to go on the top. The y's are going to go on the top. So my guess is when you're doing some of these yesterday, some of you probably put the x on the top, but you want to put the y's on the top. And then the x, the change in the x, is going to go on the bottom. And that's going to be your run. So where did my rise come from? It came from 8 subtract 6. And where did your run come from? Well, I'm going to take 7 and subtract 6. And there's my 1. All right? But they're not going to write it out on top of each other like this. Here's how they're going to write this out. And so you always have to start with the y first. The y was 6 and it jumped up to 8. You got to ask your question here now. When you do these, what's the change? How much did it change from 6 to 8? Well, 8 minus 6, that's the 2. And if you look at the blue, the x is down. Remember, the x is your run. That's the bottom. It changed from 6 to 7, and that's a change of 1. All right. So they're going to give you, I'm going to give you a formula here on the next one, but we have little x's and y's with little 1 and a little 1. What that means is this is my x, my first x. This is when there's a little 1 here, this is your first y, because that's my y value. For this point, this is your second one. So this is my first one. This is your second one. And your second one we call x2. That's your second x. And that's my second x. That's your second y. So first x, first y. Second of x, second y. All right. Let's look at another one here. So let's jump up. We'll go to what it's going to be today. Let me erase that. All right. Let's go with the y's first. So if I look, remember, it's rise, and the y has to go on the top. I got to do the y first. All right. So I'm looking at 14. What happened from 14 and it dropped down to 10? Well, if I'm at 14 and I drop down to 10, I dropped 4 units. Now, if we look, what happened with my x's? Well, I went from 7 and I jumped up to 10. So 7, jump up to 10. What's that change? How much did it change? That's a change of 3. So that's your slope right there. It's the jump in your y, or the drop in your y, and the jump in your x. Remember, the x goes on the bottom. Okay? And then your y is going to go on the top. Okay? Because y is rise. That's the y-axis. And run is your x. Okay? So I want to give you a formula here that you're going to see a lot. So here's the formula you're going to see. You're going to see, how do I find the slope? So you're going to see m is, remember, m's the variable for slope. You're going to take your second y, which is this one, 10, put that there, minus your first y. Okay, so I'm going to take my second y minus my first y. So I'm going to take y2 minus y1. And if I do that, I'm going to take 10 minus, that's a minus sign, a little crooked, minus 14. Well, if I'm at 10 and I take away 14, that's going to put me at negative 4. There it is. There's my negative 4. Now I'm going to do my x's. Remember, your x's go on the bottom. I'm going to take my second x and I'm going to subtract my first x. I'm going to take my second x and I'm going to subtract my first x. So I'm going to take 10, my second x, minus 7, my first x. And 10 minus 7 gives you 3. So there's your slope again. All right, let me punch that in. Put negative 4/3. Yeah. All right, let's look at one more. All right, let's remember your formula here. So m is slope. I'm going to take my second y minus my first y. And I'm going to take my second x. Ooh. Let's erase that. Try that again. I'm going to take my second x minus my first x. Try to go a little faster here. So let's start with your second y. Remember, this is the first y, or first x. That's your first y. Your next point, your second point. This is your second x and your second y. So let me make that pink. So here's my second y. I'm going to take 8 minus my first one right there. My first y is 1. I'm going to go from 8 to 1. So if I'm 8 and I subtract 1, what's my change? 7. Now let's look at your x's. I'm going to take my second x right here, 10, minus my first x, which is 1. 10 minus 1, that gives me 9. There's your slope. Now there's a second way you can do this. You can say, what happens when I go from 1 and I rise up to 8? How much did I jump from 1 to 8? Well, that's a jump of 7. And for my x's now, I went from 1 and I ran. Remember, it's rise over run. I went from 1 and I ran over to 10. How much did that change? From 1 to 10 is a change of 9. All right, let's try one more quick. Let me put that in here. 7/9. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's take my take my second y. Take my second y right here. That's 9. Minus my first y right here. Remember, that's your x. This is your y. 9 minus 13. And then if I take 9 and I back up to 13, if you have to, keep, change, flip. If you do that, you're going to get negative 4. All right, let's switch to my x now. I'm going to take my second x. Always start with your second one. That's 10. And I'm going to subtract 1 again. Well, we already did that. 10 minus 1, that's 9. Okay, so let's look. Let's try the other way. Remember, your x goes on the bottom. So if I'm at 1 and I run over to 10, how far did I run? 9. And for your y's, this is rise now. If I'm at 13 and I drop to 9, let me get that little dot out of there. If I'm at 13 and I drop down to 9, that means it's going to be a negative slope dropping. I'm going to drop 4 units. So that should be my answer. So punch in negative 4 slash 13. Oh my gosh. I just screwed up. Well, I'm not going to redo it. All right. I should have put in 9. I'm getting tired. All right. Good luck. If you got questions, I'm on Zoom. Let me know.